Hi, this is Mike from This Old Relic, and today I'm going to talk to you about a very, very important topic. We're going to go really deep here, hopefully not into an open wound, because we're talking about first aid kits. I just wanted to get started with, first thing you're going to need is probably some books about, first aid. If you got one of these sitting around, a Boy Scout handbook, because you used to be a Boy Scout, there's a lot of good first aid information in there. So you don't necessarily need to go around and necessarily buy books. You can probably find that information, and we're going to talk a little bit when we get into the first aid kits about where you can find even more information, at least some basic information, how to go ahead and treat different things and different items when it comes to first aid. So I just wanted to start by talking about the different kinds of kits. First off, this is a little travel kit. If this is what you're using as a first aid kit right now in your truck, and this is what you tout as saying, I have a first aid kit, yeah, you're going to want to stick around, okay? You're really going to want to stick around. What I have listed here is I have a few other first aid kits. These two are just basically ready-made first aid kits. This one here is one that I built, and we'll get into that. This is the one we're actually going to be looking into. But I kind of want to talk about these ready-made first aid kits. This has been what I've been using in my truck for a long time. I bought this basically for camping and decided to stick it in my truck because I need a first aid kit for work. I just threw this in here, didn't know what was in it, and just kind of tossed it in there. Well, this year I went through and started searching and investigating what should I have in my first aid kit, and not everything really fit into this one of everything I wanted to have and everything that I was required to have. Now, you might have a box like this in there. Kudos to you. It's a little bit better than the other one, but not by much. Now, the value of these is, you can see, it comes with some items. Basically, it's Band-Aids. It does have a roll. It usually comes with a lot of other little things here. Let's open it up and see what's inside. This is what I was talking about right here. If you have this particular pamphlet or some kind of pamphlet like that, this will give you some basic first aid to at least get you started if you have one of these kits. This is probably the most valuable thing, and the one thing that you can actually steal out of your first aid kit is if you have one of these little pamphlets here. So this comes with an non-medicated instant cold pack. That might be good if dealing with blunt trauma or something like that that doesn't really create a wound. We have rubber gloves. By the way, if you're wondering what the heck this is, I'll tell you at the end of the video, okay? I needed to use some first aid supplies. Good thing I just did this and I had them. But it comes with a roll of gauze. This is nice because you can actually take it out of the box and stick it in just like this. It's hermetically sealed. You want to make sure that everything's sealed individually like this because it keeps it sterile. Band-Aids, more Band-Aids. This comes with some hand cleansing wipes, came in with some Tylenol and some other different drugs. This one actually came in with a few gauze pads. These are 2x2 inch gauze pads. Not bad for a small first aid kit. These are non-stick pads compressed, so these are 2x3. Not too bad for, like I said, this would be kind of throw in my bag per se, having this kind of small stuff just in case something happens. Then we got some Neosporin, some Benadryl stop itching cream. This is probably one of the more comprehensive kits. This does not go even close to what we are required, though. So I went through and I looked up OSHA guidelines and what we're required in an occupational setting for first aid kits. And I came up with information for about a crew of 1 to 3 people. And that's what I'm going to be going over. I'm going to be going over that. Then I'm going to have some items that I like to have in my first aid kit that you might want to duplicate. And I actually got some suggestions from some other YouTubers about what should you put in your first aid kit. So I'm going to share those with you too. Just to let you know, all of this information, I'm going to have links for it down in the description. So you can go ahead and through those lists and find all of this information later on. But first I want to talk about the kits. Like I was saying, this kit right here is what I started with in my truck. And I basically took a lot of the stuff out of here, the other first aid kit that I'm actually now putting in my truck. But this one was great because it was small enough. It fit right in the pocket door of my truck. One of the things you want to make sure is when you put these things in your truck, and you want it to be easily accessible. Like I said, this I kept in my driver door pocket, and it stuck out a little bit. I knew exactly where it was. It filled up the space really nice. If I needed to grab it, I could pull it out really quickly. Under the seat is not necessarily the best place if you have to reach behind or in front of the seat, or from the interior side of the seat, for instance, to get to the first aid kit. If you can slip it underneath the seat, open up that driver door or passenger door, and just pull it right out from the side of the seat, that might be a good place. Just make sure that it's easily accessible. You don't want to take a first aid kit, stick it on the floor behind your regular cab truck, because a bunch of stuff is going to end up getting stuck on top of it. You want to fix it to the wall somehow, and I'm going to get a little bit more into that later. But just to kind of give you a rundown, so this particular first aid kit, this box might actually work. And the other thing you're going to want to definitely save out of this is this, but there's definitely a lot of stuff in this box that we can use to create what is going to be our first aid kit. Let's get into this thing right here. The first aid kit I set up originally, and what I did is this has a MOLLE panel on it, and I'll show you with it releases via Velcro. Okay, so when you have a MOLLE panel system like this, and you can buy these for vehicles, just like either metal or plastic panels that you can mount to the side of the vehicle. They've got them that go on the back of the seat, which is what I'm actually going to be using this for. If you look on the front of it, you see these little weaves here. Those are actually on the bag too. And if you look on this bag, it has these little snap things. You're supposed to weave those things in and out, and between that and these in the back, and it holds it tight. Now, the thing is you want to have easy access to your first aid kit. Pop that off. That will actually peel off really easy. Not all MOLLE stuff does this. This is a particularly well designed for the easy access, but you want to be able to get it off and get to it easily. Okay, so without further ado, let's look inside and see what it is. Like I said, you want to make sure that you have an easy access. One of the things too is with this strap, if you wanted to, you could take it, wrap it around the head seat of your car or something like that, and then still be able to have the Velcro panel that comes off, or you can use it to hold together the bag, as in this case. But to give you an FYI, I'm going to put a link in the description for this bag here, because this bag I really like. The one that I was just showing you on my backpack, I'm not a fan of. I want to tell you about that one. I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the description to this particular bag here. The one that I was showing you on the backpack, I'm going to tell you what it is, because I'm not very partial to that one, and I just don't want you to buy it, because day two, it was already ripped. I'll demonstrate for you on this one where it was ripped. But it's the Vidoo, is where the Vidoo bag, Viidoo is how you spell it. I'm not putting a link in the description to that one, because that one was junk. This one I've actually been pretty good with, and I'll put a description or a link in the description to this bag. This is the Kinetic, which is actually seems to be a pretty good solid bag. Let me go ahead and open it up. You see, it folds out into 3 different spaces here. And where the issue was is right here in this pocket. It started tearing away from it. These interior pockets seem a lot more durable. Keep in mind, if you're using different colored first aid kits, the interiors might be of different materials so that they can try to match those colors, which might make them a little more weaker. But this one that's in red with the black interior, they have a black one with a black interior as well, so it's probably the same material. But as you can see, as you look into it, there's actually a whole lot of stuff. It doesn't look like a very big bag, but there's a whole lot of stuff here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm just going to speed up the video, but I'm going to actually pull all this stuff out of here, one piece at a time, just so you can see just quite exactly how much stuff I have shoved in this bag. Okay, so I have everything set up, and OSHA kind of goes through a lot of items that they want to have, and OSHA found this list for recommendations for a crew of about 1 to 3 people. So this would be ideal to put in your truck or trailer. Again, if you're putting it in your trailer, make sure it's an enclosed trailer and keep it towards like the back door. You want to make sure it's really easy to get to. Don't pile anything up in front of it. In a case of an emergency, you want to be able to actually grab it out of the trailer. So make sure, even if it's attached to the side of the trailer, make sure there's an easy way to get it out of there in a very quick hurry. I'm going to start going through these items that are required by OSHA. It would really surprise me when you actually get into how to do first aid and what you really need. This is a very comprehensive list for which you're going to be able to use in any particular type of an emergency. And some of these items, I'm actually going to go through and pull them out of the packages and show you what exactly how they work, what you can do with them. I'm not going to go into great detail. If you want to go into great detail, there's a lot of other YouTubers that go into a lot of detail about these things. But there's just a couple of items that you might want to see like taken out of the package and actually see what they look like so that you know what they look like. One thing that you need, gauze pads at least 4 by 4 inches, which we have right here. I got 2 of them. It says gauze pads, so I'm guessing they want more than one, but they don't really give you a numerical amount to put in there, so there's 2. You need 2 large gauze pads, say that 10 times fast, at least 8 by 10 inches, and that's what I have right here. These are 8 by 10. Some of these things, in order to get these, you might end up having to buy a lot of them. I bought a whole box of these. In order to get them a whole box of the gauze pads, I ended up buying I think 4 of these in a package. This was a whole dozen to get what I needed. And that's if you're ordering them online. You should be able to buy these things individually. I was using my FSA account to purchase a lot of this stuff. Now we need a box of adhesive bandages or Band-Aids. So what I've done, I've just taken and put together. You don't need a lot of these. I would actually just go ahead and, if you have these in the box, just take it and pull them out. You don't need these little tiny minuscule Band-Aids. I mean, these are great if you cut yourself shaving, I guess, but as far as needing them in your first aid kit when you're doing your landscape work, don't really need those. So you just want to get those standard size. Knuckle bandages are really good. Fabric bandages are also really good to have because they stick and stay really well. But just your standard, more of your standard size Band-Aids is pretty good. Maybe have 1 or 2 big ones just in case that's needed. But you remember, you can always refill this, and chances are they're not going to go through like 50 of these in one day. So just have a good assortment of Band-Aids. We need 1 package of gauze roller bandage at least 2 inches wide, which is exactly what this is. So this is 4 inches. So you can actually use this. This could be cut in half. So if you wanted to save space or whatever, they want at least 2 inches. This is very, very useful if you need to pack wounds or something like that, as well as kind of holding things together and on. This works very well for that. 2 triangular bandages, which are these things right here. And in case you have never, ever seen a triangular bandage before, we'll just open one of these up. And I'll show you, because I had to buy like a whole box of dozen of these things. So these are triangular bandages, and why they call it a triangular bandage. It's shaped like a triangle. These you can use as to hold your arm if it's broken. But you can use this also to tie things down if you need to, like tie the splint down or something like that. These are actually one of those very versatile, and if you do these with a broken arm and you need to sling, that's the word I was looking for, make a sling, you actually want to use 2 of these, because you want to have one of these to hold the arm up, and then what you do is you wrap another one around the person so they can't do this with it. So you're trying to immobilize that the best that you can. So those are really, that's actually an OSHA required, and I was really surprised just how useful those are. So you need a wound clean agent such as sealed, moistened towelette. Now, some of the stuff like the gauze, for instance, like I pointed out in the other kit, the Band-Aids, you're not going to find the triangular bandages. You're probably not going to find the 8 by 10 unless you find an OSHA approved kit. But this can be taken out of one of those, off the shelf Johnson & Johnson ones stuck in there. Like I said, I took it out of this kit to put in here. In case you're wondering what the gauze roll looks like, this is the one I opened up from, this. You can take this and use it and shove it in a wound if it's big enough that you can fit your fingers in to pack it, or non-adherent, however you want to call it, pads, because these really help when you dress the wound to put these directly onto the wound and then put the gauze around it, because this gauze will stick in the wound and it just creates a bigger mess. Now, if this is all you got, go ahead and use it, because honestly, if you need to use this, they've got bigger problems than having some of these fibers left in it. They will, in the hospital and everything, clean it all up before they close it up. So that's really not too big of a huge issue to mess with. So after the wound cleaning agent, towelette, scissors. Try to find some decent scissors. These I think were made in China. Yeah, they're not that great, I'm sure. But you're not going to have to go super expensive. I mean, you can go with, when you deal with medical stuff, you could end up purchasing scissors for like close to $100. These were little $10 items, and I got the $10 item because it was covered by the FSA account. So that's why I got these particular scissors. There were not a lot of them that were covered by it. But you're not going to need really hardy scissors. Hopefully, you really don't even need these or any of this stuff. That's the hope. So we've got scissors and at least one blanket. So this is the blanket I got. It's just an emergency blanket, Mylar emergency blanket. If somebody does have a massive wound and is losing blood profusely, you want to cover them up, even if it's warm weather. You want to try to keep their body temperature up because clotting will start getting inhibited once the body gets down to around 90 degrees. So you want to make sure they stay warm. Tweezers, I think those are self-explanatory. You get a splinter or whatever, you got tweezers to get that out. Adhesive tape. And this is just to tie up wounds. I used adhesive tape when this happened. It's really good for using it to apply direct pressure to a wound. Rubber gloves. That's just basically to protect from pathogens. If these become too much of a hassle in an emergency, you probably don't even need these, like I said, unless you have any really big open wounds anywhere near on yourself, near you, because your skin works pretty good at keeping those diseases and bloodborne pathogens away. It's that blood-to-blood contact you have to worry about. Resuscitation equipment. Now, I have some resuscitation equipment right here. So this is all basically you need. This, oh, it came with instructions. Look at that. And all this is that this is something you put this side up, single use only. So you put this around the person's mouth, and then if you have to do CPR, you breathe into this. It just protects you, so you're not making out with the person you're doing CPR with. Although, if you have to, because you can't find this or whatever, that isn't in there, I'm sure you will never speak about that. It'll be like a what happened in Vegas stays in Vegas situation. So 2 elastic wraps. I got 2 different size elastic wraps. And these are also really good for holding direct pressure onto a wound. You know, after you put the gauze or whatever around it, wrap this up just to kind of hold that pressure on the wound. A splint. Now this came in a roll, so if you see them sold in a roll, don't worry too much. You can just pull them out and fold them however you want. I folded this one in a particular fashion so I can fit it in the first aid kit. Directions requesting emergency assistance. Others call 911. So you have that information, a professional look. You can add the other information if you want. You are in an emergency. You don't want to be reading this. You already want to know what to do. Now that I've gone through everything that's required by OSHA, which is actually quite a bit, there's 15 different items. I'm going to tell you some of the extra things that I put in my first aid kit just in case I need it. Okay, so now I'm going to go through some of the additional things personally that I like to keep in my first aid kit in my truck. I keep a 2x2 gauze pad in there, and this is just in case I do have a small cut or scrape or something like on a finger. That makes it a little easier. I don't have to cut gauze bandages, and this was just already sitting in my other first aid kit that I was using. One of the things I have in there is a burn bandage. You think, well, what are you going to burn yourself on? Well, there's hot exhausts and things like that out there when we're working with. And if somebody really lays their leg up on an exhaust, I don't want them using the cream. I want them just to take I just want to take a bandage, take it out and put it, throw it on the leg or whatever they got the bad burn on. The thing is with burns, the longer it takes to treat them, the worse they're going to get in the process. So you're probably not going to have a lot of cold water, running water in the field. So if that's the case, you're going to want to have something that's going to treat the burn right away. The burn bandage is one of those things for it. The other thing I have is burn cream. I was sitting there and we were camping, and I had the grill, the Coleman, not the Coleman grill, but the Coleman stove there, and it has a grate on top of it. I took the grate and I went to go put it away, not thinking that I just got done cooking on it, and grabbed it, and it was really hot. And we were actually out in another area picnicking at the time, and I was throwing triple antibiotic ointment on there to try to help soothe the pain. It doesn't work very well. That's why I keep now burn cream. That's why I got the burn cream, and that's why when I sat there and really thought about it, I probably want a burn bandage in there as well. After bite and after sting, these are topicals that can go on if you get a really nasty bite or if you get stung by something. These are just topical ointments. You just crack that and goes into the thing. I actually, Sting Kill is what it's called. And I keep both of those in there because obviously, you're always going to be dealing with bees or wasps or something that's going to sting you. Murder hornets, who knows? And then after bite, because, sometimes that mosquito bite can really get after you. So I keep those suckers in there. This triple antibiotic ointment. Like I was saying, I was trying to use this as burn cream, which you technically can. It doesn't really ease pain as much. And you already get these little packets. Like I said, you're going to end up buying a box of like 1,000 of them. So I was generous with it. These are one of those items that do have an expiration date. These expire in 2025. I just put these in here this year. I have aspirin, but I actually recommend getting baby aspirin. And the reason why is in case somebody is experiencing a heart attack, it's about the one and the only thing you can really do if you have it is to give them some baby aspirin because you want them to chew it because it gets the medicine in their system right away. And it'll increase their survivability. Varieties of medications, particularly painkillers. There's some Advil. So what I have here is diphenhydramine. Now, this was one of the things I don't like. I keep this in my first aid kit, but I typically wouldn't recommend keeping this if you have a lot of guys or gals, for that matter, that work for you. And the reason why is this stuff makes you drowsy. Now, Ronaldo over at Big Sun's Lawn Care said that he keeps Benadryl in his truck in his first aid kit just because of all the issues he deals with bugs and things like that. It doesn't make him drowsy. You'll know if this stuff makes you drowsy or not. This stuff does make me drowsy, but like I said, I use this thing. I know what this stuff is. I use this kit also for camping, and sometimes you want to take medication that makes you drowsy and may ease your sinuses as well. And this is one of those items, and you can thank my mom for this one, which is Imodium AD. Growing up, and even when I first started driving, my mom was like, most parents are like, you got a first aid kit? You got enough gas? You have the cell phone? At the time, that was a big stink because there was like one cell phone in the entire family, and it was like this big. And if you were lucky enough to have that in your, do you have all that? That's what a lot of parents at my, when I was first driving, my mom was like, do you have Imodium AD in your glove compartment? Thing is that the reason why I recommend Imodium AD is because this one could save you money. It really can. If you're out in the field or if your guys or gals are out in the field and, well, they're having some zupa dupa, so to speak. They got some diarrhea going on. You give them Imodium AD, it can help control it so they're not running out to the gas station every 30 seconds and coming right back to the same property because they've got diarrhea. So it could actually help save you some money. Now I'm going to go into some more dealing with large colossal bleeding. So when dealing with large colossal bleeding, and I'm going to go through some of these things and kind of give you a runabout what they're for. So first off, probably one of the most common items is the tourniquet. I was really surprised that this wasn't on the OSHA list, but honestly, there's a lot of other items that are on the OSHA list that you can use instead of this. But one of the things I do recommend a tourniquet because this is pretty self-explanatory. If you understand how a tourniquet works, you can figure out how to use said tourniquet. I really highly recommend that you actually put in your first aid kit. It's one of those things that even if I explain it to you, if you see one and I can explain it to you once, you'll figure out how to use it pretty easily. So there are different kinds of tourniquets. I forgot what this one is called, but this is actually the style I would recommend because it is very straightforward and easy. Some of them are bands and things like that. You can get more very high tech, but they require more training. This doesn't require a whole lot of training to figure out how to use. So that's one of the reasons why I recommend this particular style. And go with a quality tourniquet. I mean, this is one of those things you should never have to replace unless you use it or unless it gets super duper old and, things start falling apart. Quick Clot, I kind of regret purchasing this. This is really expensive. It has chemicals in it that's supposed to help stop bleeding. If you're dealing with a large open wound and you need to pack a wound, which is what this would be used for, you can use gauze as well. And to be honest with you, there's only maybe a 3 to 5% chance of improvement on survival rate. But this is also one of those items that has an expiration date. And they usually don't last extremely long. This is 2025, so it lasts a while. But I would say you probably don't need this item. But I stuck it on the list just because, well, I went ahead and got it anyways. And this is the other thing you want to get is a chest seal, particularly 2 chest seals. Now, these are items that are typically used in the tactical realm. Chest seals, tourniquets, quick clot. If you're going into war, you want to make sure you have all 3 of these on your person. Or maybe if you're a police officer going into a raid or something like that, you probably want to have a personal first aid kit with these things, so that if a medic or somebody has to apply them, they're right there. You know you have them, and you can guide somebody or do it yourself if you need to in those situations. But they're basically typically used for ballistics. However, you can't really pack anything in the chest area or even in the stomach area. So your best chance of survival if you're dealing with massive bleeding from either a stick going through you or something like that is going to be putting a chest seal on it. And the reason why you usually have 2, and usually want vented, these are not vented. I could not find vented that were covered by the FSA, but these are not vented. But the reason why you want 2 is because if something goes straight through you, you can cover it in the back and cover it in the front. You got 2 of them for that. That's one of the big things for the chest seals. Like I said, this stuff here, I would recommend the tourniquet regardless. The chest seal, I'm going to leave as your call, as well as the quick clot. The quick clot, like I said, I don't think this is really necessary, but I had gotten it anyway, so it's in the video. This is probably going to be a little bit more necessary than anything else. Now, if you know what you're doing, you don't even really technically need the tourniquet. You could be packaging bandages with good old-fashioned gauze if you really know what you're doing. There were a couple of items that were on the list that I do want to make comment of. Now, contact solution was not on the list, but this one really blew my mind. Eye wash in your truck. So this comes from Dan the Lawn Man. And make sure to check out Dan the Lawn Man, but that really blew my mind. And I do wear contacts, so I have contact. I can use contact solution instead of eye wash. Unless you do use contacts, I wouldn't substitute contact solution. I would actually get some kind of eye wash or something to put in there. But he always is saying you're constantly getting stuff in your eyes, either large items, specks of dust, that kind of thing. Eye wash is a really great thing, and it blew my mind. He's absolutely correct. That was one of the items I didn't think about that he did. Kudos, Dan. The other one that I wouldn't call this a first aid item, but I want to mention it to you because I actually consider this more as being PPE, as personal protective equipment, and that would be sunscreen. This came from Randy from Dueling Cut and Trim. Sunscreen is extremely important. I do keep this in my truck. I don't necessarily keep it in my first aid kit, but I keep it in the door of my truck. Really handy. Keep it on the passenger side. The first aid kit was on the driver's side. So I can go ahead and get to it really easy. I know exactly where it's at and get to it easy. It's not getting filled up with a bunch of stuff, because this is one of the most commonly used things. You should be using this pretty much daily, because sunburns can get really, really serious if you're out in the sun too long and you're not protected. So definitely want to have some sunscreen. So thank you, Randy, and thank you, Dan, for those suggestions, and also thank you, Ronaldo, for your suggestions. I will link to their channels so you can check them out in the description below. I probably do want to just leave you with one more note, and that is the difference between first aid and PPE. This is more as being PPE, as personal protective equipment. First aid is what you have when that personal protective equipment fails. It's what you're running into, either when that personal protective equipment fails or you decided not to use it and you got hurt anyways, or whatever the myriad of reasons are. The idea is the stuff that I just showed you, you want to have in case you need it. You don't want to ever have to use it. So make sure that you're staying safe. Safety glasses, hearing protection, sunscreen, chaps if you're using a chainsaw. Keep this stuff in its box. That would be the best. That's the best thing you can do, is just make sure that all this stuff just stays in its box and you never have to pull it out. This is when things fail, and that's when you have problems. Outside of maybe needing a Band-Aid or two, or maybe some triple antibiotic ointment or some Imodium AD, that box, you don't want to ever have to open it up. If you ever do need to open it up for any of those things, you want to make sure you have what you need on hand, because you could save a life. and it might be yours that it saves. So on that note, I just want to leave you with that, and I will see you next time.
Oh yeah, I told you I was going to tell you about this. So what happened was I ended up needing 6 stitches on my finger. The brace is just there because so I don't bump it, but it bled quite a bit because it was caused by one of these. I was assembling these things at the time and sliced my finger open. This is a broad tip arrow for used for like bow hunting. That's what caused that. And I went into the box that came with the multiple packs of, this gauze, pulled one out, or my wife actually pulled it out and started wrapping that around my finger. So this video came in handy in my life. Now hopefully my finger will come back to normal someday. All right, see you next time.